Hello there, Crafty Doer. Jessica Michaels here with the Crafty Maven Getaway, diving into the 2025 October Mixed Media Kit. Welcome if you are new to my channel, the Crafty Doings Mixed Media Paper Crafts. In this video, I will be creating a mixed media layout and also playing along with the monthly challenge for March, Lovely Layers. So grab a comfy chair, grab all your crafty things, and let's get into the crafty doings. I have a short reel unboxing this kit, and let me tell you, it is jam-packed. I was quite impressed. There's so many goodies in there. One of the things that popped out to me was this mixed media tag, which I'm going to dive right into creating. There are a few types of mediums that you can use to adhere paper onto your tag. I usually don't use my glue stick, but because I was showing you all the different types of options, this one was the last one that I had in hand, so I'm going to use it. Now, the kit came with this collage sheet of like a newspaper clipping. I absolutely loved it. I went ahead and clipped the larger font portions, and I say clipped, but really I tore it off because that gives you that nice torn edge. And I'm going to try and focus on adhering these collage pieces of paper horizontally because then I'm going to go in and layer different textures vertically in the center of the tag. I love using this tiny bottle for my glue because it has that needle point and it's easier for me to get glue underneath the edges of torn papers like this. I got this bottle, I think, off of Amazon, but the glue that's in it is art glitter glue, which is my absolute favorite adhesive. I've heard a lot of good things about Nuvo. I may give it a go. I've been saying that for like a year though. So if you're a Nuvo gal or guy, let me know if it's worth it or not. So now that I have these papers glued nice and evenly on my tag, I'm going to clip the edges off, and I'm actually going to use one of these little scraps to adhere on top of the tag because I feel like it's missing some print. Speaking of print, I want to take you through my process of layering a mixed media tag. This is what my process normally looks like when I create a mixed media tag. I like to start with a bold pattern as the first layer to my tag. Now, it could be a bold print like in this collage paper, or it could be alphas or numeral stamps that I usually go for black ink. You could also use pattern paper, but it has to be super tiny condensed pattern paper because what's going to happen to this first layer is it's going to sporadically come through once we start adding the rest of the layers. So I love all the different textured paper that is included in this kit. Very inspirational, and I know that I want to layer all these beautiful textures. So I'm going to start to clip a little bit of each paper and set it aside for my visual creative process. Okay, so the next step to my mixed media tag process is texture paste. This is a texture paste by Tim Holtz, which, to be fair, I've had it for a while, and I've been trying to bring it back to life by spritzing it with water when I remember, which isn't often. So I'm just going to reach for this Ranger texture paste, and what I'm going to do is grab a spatula and scrape texture paste on the edges of the tag as well as some of the edges of the torn paper. I'm going to focus on the outer areas of the tag because I know that I'm going to layer texture paper in the center, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. But before I get to the texture paste, the kit also includes these scribble sticks by Dina Wakley. And I'm going to use the night color to write some script just for additional interest. Once that texture paste is dry, I'm going to go back to the night scribble stick, but this time I'm going to spritz some water and wet my paintbrush to pull as much paint as I can from it. I'm going to use this to add to the tag. Now, for a little bit more interest, I'm also going to play with the Finbar Prima Malachite Green acrylic paint. This comes in the kit as well. And before I start adding the paint, I'm going to spritz my tag with water. That way I'm not stroke brushing paint onto the tag and instead spritzing it with water and kind of letting the water move the paint around. Remembering that I'm just focusing on the outer edges of the tag. Something that you'll hear me repeat over and over again about mixed media is how important drying in between the layers is. This is what creates depth and not a big old mushy mess. I remember the first aha moment that I had about layers, and it completely changed the way I created with mixed media. And so when I say dry in between layers, I mean I first added this paint, then I dried it, and then I'm going back in there and adding another layer of medium. And then after I spritz and move around or splatter or whatnot, then I'm going to dry this layer and repeat as many times as I feel necessary. Usually it's about 3 to 4 times. It just depends on the look that you're going for. I'm going to pick up some of that wet scribble stick with my finger and then gently rub it across on top of the texture paste. This creates like a really cool highlight. I love these scribble sticks if you haven't played with them before, because they have a texture. It's like chalk and it dries. It does not dry like chalk, but it looks like wet chalk when it dries, if that makes any sense. Next, I'm going to go in with the scribble stick because it is still moist, and then kind of turn it on its side and do the same thing I was doing with my finger and just lightly color the textured paste. And then also I'm going to go in on the edges. I pulled this green textured piece of the paper that came with the kit, and I had this idea of using it as the backdrop to my white scrapbook layout. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that and adhere it to it. So here's a little peek as far as the textures that I'm going to use, but looking at the manila tag, I feel like the backdrop is way too white. So I'm going to go in with my antique linen distress spray stain and add a little bit of movement by dipping my mop brush in water and then just kind of splashing it about the paper. If you don't have spray stain, you can also use the antique linen distress oxide or whatever similar tint in ink pad that you have. Make sure that you dry this layer, and if you'd like, you can do some splatters or yet another layer of that off-white mopping technique. in with the Media Gloss in Mustard. This gloss comes in the kit, and I'm going to do some script writing with this droplet. If you notice, I did mark where my photo is going to be so I know how far out to do this. I originally was going to use the Scribble Stick in Tangerine to do this, but it was a little too bright than what I wanted. I don't think I mentioned this pink piece of paper here that is behind my photo. This is like almost like Japanese rice paper. This is pulling the pinks from my photos. Now I'm diving into the Vicky Boutin print shop ephemera, and I'm trying to select my sentiment. And I think I'm going to go with snapshots because of the bold script. Now I also have this really cool like mesh scrap piece of circle pattern material. I'm going to use this, and then I'm going to layer some of this like butcher paper. Thanks to the challenge for March, which is lovely layers. Again, I cannot stop thinking about layers. So this is why my brain went to layer all those pretty textured papers. So now it's just a matter of assembling my scrapbook layout. For a bit of the accent, I use Prima Flowers, which is included in the kit. This, however, is not included in the kit. Love Deco Art Love Color 3D Jelly Drop, but it is an add-on. So don't forget that when you're selecting your kits, you can always shop a la carte and see what is in the shop for add-ons. I'm bringing my scrap piece of paper to show you how I test these products out. So Dina Wakley's Media Gloss in Mustard I hadn't used. I hadn't used the jelly drops. And I kind of just played with it, see what the texture was when it dried, when it was wet. And these types of scrap papers I end up using for my journals. So it does not go to waste. Very quickly, another thing that I did add to my tag that I did not talk about and is included in the kit is like this faux leather string that I tied at the top of my tag. Now, here was playing with the tag to see whether I wanted to add dimension to it, and I thought there was enough dimension with all the layers of textured papers and fabrics. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my handy dandy little glue spout and glue the edges to my tag. I'm adding a little bit of foam tape to the beginning of the title because the second half is propped up on top of all of those layers, so I don't want it to be flimsy or on a different level. So these jelly drops look just like what they're called, like little drops of jelly, and they dry three-dimensional. So I'm going to focus on adding some droplets on the right side of the page where it's already heavy on the mixed media. And I love that it's blue because it brings out the blue in the tag and the blue in the photos. Now there is one thing that I end up doing off camera only because I started cleaning up after I shot the video and I realized that I did not use the metallic wax that I have. sitting on the top of my craft mat. So I used the exact same technique that I used with the scribble stick, which was I applied some on the tip of my finger and very lightly brushed it on top of the textured paste. The only different thing I did was kind of smear it where there wasn't any textured paste. You will see that in the still shots at the end of the video. And this is the final look to the mixed media tag layout. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that I have used the 2025 October mixed media kit. There are still a few left, but only a few, so go grab them if you were inspired to use any of these products in this video. Don't forget that there are add-ons and other kits, as well as the most recent mixed media kit, the Garden Party Kit. Also, the Crafty Maven Getaway has turned 1, and in celebration, there is a huge sale going on. Save 25% off using code HAPPY1st. Until the next crafty doings.